Everyone's flooding
Let's
in.
see.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to part two of the webinar series that wasn't meant to be a series, really, but it was so popular that we had to make it a series. Part two, all around permissions, SharePoint, and the path to control for AI in Microsoft 365. If you joined us for the first webinar, you probably remember the frenzy of questions and interest that we got. This one, Dave, in part two, I think is going to be even more of a frenzy. So why don't we get rocking and rolling? I will frantically click the add middle button as you start getting going here.
Yeah, I'm wondering maybe we should just turn off the lobby now. Um,
I'll leave it. I can keep
all
clicking here.
right, cool. So actually we have your intro slide first, so maybe I'll let you
Yep.
give it a start here, Michael.
Perfect. Let's do that. So my name is Michael Basarik, one of the founders and the CEO here at Orchestry, seven-time former Microsoft SharePoint MVP. So happy that everyone is here. This was a great webinar when we did the first time, and I think lots of interest around obviously SharePoint permissions and everything else. There's going to be a ton of more stuff as well we're going to be talking about, particularly around agents and all of the good stuff around permissions around that side. And then lots of other things that we're going to try to hopefully get to this time, which is showing you a lot of the work we're actually doing with Orchestry around permissions management, because we didn't get to it last time.
Right.
So we're hoping we can get to it this time as well. And welcome, Dave.
Thank you. It's I think it's probably our top two favorite topics to talk about, right? Is this security and storage probably right now. It seems to be kind of the biggest conversations. And so we were very excited to see the attendance we got on the first one, and we felt like we had only scratched the surface, really, of this topic. So excited to be here again. My name's David, Director of Product here. I've been working with Michael and the Orchestry team for a while, and really excited to talk through this complicated problem, how it might impact you, how it might impact your use and planning of agents in specific circumstances, as well as, yeah, we'd love to show you what we're thinking around how we think that a product like Orchestry can also help clarify this. So we won't spend a lot of time talking about Orchestry at the beginning here. We'll save that for the end, but we are an integrated kind of holistic M365 management platform. It covers security, storage, provisioning, visibility, and all of the pain points that we tend to see across enterprises, whether they be small, medium, or large. And so we'll focus on where Orchestry can help at the end of this, specifically around the topic we're sharing today. I know we both also agree. I think we're good at these webinars together. We I think both find that the more engagement, the better. So if you have any questions, we would love to try to answer them. We will be monitoring the chat. We can tag team that. And if anything, is interesting, you want us to go back, we'll do our best. But we do have an action-packed agenda here, right, Michael?
We do. Yeah, but we'll see. If you see me and Dave typing, we're not typing to each other. I hate when people do that in meetings, right? You're meeting them and they're typing. We're probably here typing in the chat. But as Dave said, we got a lots to cover. Get your questions in, folks. Think of it as free consulting for an hour. Would love to help. So just let us know. Put him into the chat here and we'll do our best to answer them.
So as we said, we had a first part to this. We have a few of the same pieces in here, but our goal is to move through those quite quickly at a much faster clip here today. So if you find that the beginning of this seems awfully aggressively fast, it's just because we have a recording of the previous session available. So if you need that, just reach out to us. We'll make sure you get it. And if you were with us in the first one and you're here again, we thank you for that, because we're very interested in going kind of the next layer here together. So we're going to start just very basically here, but again, at a faster clip around permissions, and talk a little bit about the foundational concepts. We'll try to move through this really fast just to make sure we're on a level playing field here. So when we look at SharePoint permissions, we think about the different layers in which those permissions can be managed. We look at permissions in sites in Microsoft Teams, and of course in M365 groups, right? That's kind of the new modus operandi from Microsoft and how we should be managing permissions in most cases. We know with Microsoft groups, right, that we have some things that have the group associated with them and some of them that don't. So a good example is a team. That team also has a team site behind it. Always will have an M365 group. You can also create a team site that is associated with the group, and it doesn't have that team. You can later teamify it and add that chat component to it if you like. But there still does exist these not, I mean, I don't even think legacy is necessarily the right word anymore, still supported other types of containers in the SharePoint world, like the communication site, that exist without a group, right? So the permission model is slightly different in that the management has to be done at the site level. There is an interaction here, and this already starts to cause confusion for a lot of people we've worked with as consultants over the years. Many users for probably 20 years, we've talked about these same topics, right? And it's confusing, right? But if you do have an associated group with a SharePoint site, essentially the users in these two groups are inherited down from the group into the site. So you don't have to manage them in two places. That would be crazy, right? You would ideally manage them here, and then Microsoft will take care of this flow for you over here. You do already, though, see a delta. We have an additional role available in SharePoint, among many others actually that you can create. But at the beginning, you have at least one additional role that doesn't exist here on the group side. There's no visitor role for the group. Now, in an ideal world, what we want is to manage things at the group level and for everything to stay aligned. But we know that none of us, I don't think any of us, live in an ideal world. Certainly our SharePoint environments are never ideal. They're never pristine. And while we might want to aim for something like this, where the same three individuals that are owners in a group are also the same owners in the site, what we tend to see, and we see this all the time, is stuff like this, right? This is just one example, right? Where you can have a much larger audience potentially that has access to the SharePoint site than the group. And you would be forgiven as an owner looking over the group access, not realizing necessarily very easily that there's actually a lot more people than you thought that can actually get into the critical content here. So how does this work? Technically speaking, this is the slide that kind of tries to explain it. Oh, it looks like I lost it. There it is. On the left here, we have our group membership. And what Microsoft does for us is that they auto map the users from the owner role in the group into a group that is maintained on the site side of things. And that goes for both owners and members. But look at this example here where there's all these extra users here that don't belong in the group, and you would never see them in the group, which makes that visibility hard.
I think in my mind, I mean, we've talked about this. This is extremely confusing, right, Dave, for people. Like, I understand we want to put them into the group, but then you have this different experience now, right, between looking at the group membership and looking at the SharePoint site permissions. And then the majority of the reporting that you find in M365 out of the box is at that group level. And then you get a whole bunch of permission sprawl and oversharing and everything else.
Right. So what does this mean for sharing links? Because when we talk about sharing and permission, that's an old topic, but one that's kind of been making the rounds in recent years as more of a topic for concern is sharing links. And that's because Microsoft introduced, a very user-friendly, arguably too easy way in which you can just click quick copy link. We're talking about SharePoint Online here, not on-premise, and it will create a link object that then grants access. You could almost think of this access as backdoor access in some cases to the content. So here's an example that we drew here. We showed this last time as well. Let's say you have a structure of a site, a library, a folder, and then some documents in that folder. You can go ahead and create links, and those links can be multiple. Right. So on this executive salaries Excel, I might have an everyone link created, which means anyone in the world can access it. An organizational link, meaning anyone in the whole company can access it. And then less risky, a specific users link, which grants additional people potentially access that don't necessarily have access at the site or the group level. Right. And the problem with this that we see a lot is that even if you fully understand the difference between the link types, it is very easy to make a misclick here. Because what Microsoft does is it defaults the link, and hopefully none of you have your default link set to anyone. That's a very bad idea. But sometimes this happens, or sometimes the default very commonly is the organizational link. So it means that without thinking, you've just clicked copy link. You haven't even actually been asked what kind of link you want to create. It will automatically default to the default in your tenant, which may be a very overly permissive sharing link. So what this creates is this problem, right? Where we have now, in addition to the complexity we started with, we're trying to wrap your head around group access, site access, monitoring it in different experiences, like Michael said, is crazy. We also now have to figure out a way to monitor sharing links as well. Like, who has access to things just directly via sharing links? And that is extremely hard to do. So let's go and look at a recording here showing you some of these experiences in real time. You see here how quickly it has actually copied an organizational link. It didn't prompt me for the type. All I did was click copy link, and it's gone and created it. So a bunch of things are happening so quickly here that it is very easy for something overly permissive or accidental to happen. Another example of this, right, is here we're copying a link. In this case, it's defaulted it to the anyone link, which is the worst possible default, because it means that if anyone gets a hold of this link, no matter who they are, they do not need to authenticate into your environment. They do not even need to identify themselves. They can access this link directly. So this is scary, right? Because you can see someone emailing a link here. This is not unusual, right? I mean, my colleagues asked me for access to a link. I needed to go and run, and I copied the link quickly, sent it to him in an email. Anyone that gets this URL, it could drop into Reddit, it could go anywhere, will grant people access to that file, right? So I think we know the risks here around the anyone links pretty well at this point.
And it's kind of interesting, Dave, because it's an important thing to talk about. If you remember, up to a year and a half ago before Copilot, we never really heard the word overshare before, right? We talked about permissions. Everyone knew they had to mess with permissions, but no one really did anything about it. All of a sudden, Copilot comes out. And now the issue with the anyone link, as David said, is it does allow anyone to have access to that link. It literally means anyone. So you can take that link, you can send it to anyone on Earth. They can access that piece of content. But the biggest issue is, because they're not authenticated, you don't even know who the hell has accessed this piece as well.
Right.
The reason that this was problematic is Microsoft, in their wisdom, decided to set the anyone link as the default for a tenant. So one of the first tips we have is, if you have that set as the default in your Microsoft 365 tenant, you should change it. Unless you have a very specific need to allow anyone links, you should change that. And then also, and I think we're going to talk about this, Dave, the anyone link is also more interesting in terms of, you can send me the link, but I don't actually get access to that piece of content until I've clicked on the link, and then actually reporting on it happens. Oh, sorry, that's for the people, the existing people access as well, but we'll talk about that as well. But essentially, the anyone link, if you have that as a default, or you have that enabled in your Microsoft 365 environment, that's kind of the first loophole you should definitely close.
Right.
And it's pretty easy to do, and kind of put those sharing options down.
Right. And what we're trying to do here in the first few minutes, and what we're nearly there, is to build the story of why this impacts AI at all, right? And to Michael's point, why has this become such a hot topic recently? Part of it has to do with this very strange phenomena that Michael just alluded to, which is the links and the way that links are interacted with can actually impact access. And this is not happening in a visible way, right? You send a link out to 100 people, you have no control and certainly no visibility easily through how many of those 100 people have actually clicked that link, right? That's not easy information to find. But the problem is that what Copilot does and what Search does is it looks to see, and it tries to always respect the existing access that exists on an item, right? But now, based on whether a link is clicked or not, we actually have a very big difference here. So on the left, I've created a link, and I've added a colleague of mine named Raina. She has yet to click it, but you notice here on the left, we see no evidence that Raina has access. As soon as Raina has accessed it, she is now listed here. She's also listed here, right? So we actually can see that the issue that creates is that has a fundamental impact on how search and AI work, right? And this is something that people are often shocked by, right? So I walked this through all the way to the end of the example here, where before I clicked the link, I asked Copilot a question, expected to get the answer, and you can see that it was not able to answer the question because I had not opened the link yet. As soon as I opened the link and I re-asked the question, I got my answer immediately, right? So this is showing you the relationship between how these tools behave and the underlying methods in which sharing is occurring, right? And that's the problem, I think, that
Yeah,
we
let's
see.
maybe spend a minute on this because this is really important to know because we know a lot of companies, or we've heard with a lot of our customers, Dave, hey, I've shared a bunch of content out, and then Dave tries to go to Copilot and find it,
Right.
right? But he can't see it.
Can't see
So
it.
what's going on, or either Copilot's a piece of garbage or whatever else that is.
Yes.
The difference between a file share, when you share something with a file share, is you get that access straight away. It doesn't work the same way in SharePoint Online, and it's a very subtle thing which I don't think a lot of people know of. I can share to Dave 30,000 links, but until he clicks on them, he's not going to have access to that, right? He's not going to have access to that via search, and he's not going to have access to that via Copilot until he actually clicks on that link. So it's a really important point to know, right? That again, if you give someone access to a piece of content, you're not really giving them access until they click on that particular item. And then behind the scenes, I think you're going to talk about this, Dave, a whole bunch of craziness happens. People get added to various groups and broken permissions happens and everything else. So again, it's really, really important. The other thing with the anyone links as well, just so people know, Copilot would not surface content that's been shared with anyone links unless someone has clicked on that anyone link before. So it's the same mechanism there as well.
Yeah, it's a really interesting phenomenon, and we can see why there are reasons for this perhaps, but it is not something that's intuitive to you as a user. And we realize with any adoption of any technology, when we're talking about security, if your actions don't have a predictable outcome, you're going to have a really hard time imposing governance on your users, right? Because it's not intuitive. They don't think that this is going to be risky, and why should they, right? It's really not appearing that way. Links to folders are interesting as well, and I usually save this for a specific little demo here because I think it's a really good example of a black hole concept here, where you can also share links to folders, right? And the problem with linking to folders is that you don't necessarily have control over what's going to be in that folder in the future, right? So maybe I shared this folder with someone at a point in time when it had only 2 documents, but then my colleague came in here later. My colleague did not know that there was a link that was giving people access to the folder. He had no idea. And so he just innocently dropped 30 more documents into that folder. Well, guess what? There's no warning, there's no message. Now that person that accesses that link is going to see 32 documents, right? And no one really knows what is going on here. So it's a really good example of another wrinkle in the process that can be very hard to manage on the human level with like actual users, right? So let's talk a little bit briefly here, very quickly, about broken inheritance. We don't really have time to go through this, I don't think, at length. We talked about this in the first session, so if you're interested in this, please go back and look at that. But broken inheritance is essentially just the idea that the normal model of SharePoint, where objects below a container will always inherit the same permissions as what is kind of on the level above, is essentially broken, right? Or interrupted. And this can happen through a lot of ways, and a lot of people don't know this, but the minute you create a sharing link, it actually breaks inheritance on that item in the tree. So even if you remove the sharing link, that item is still going to be in a broken inheritance state, and it's almost impossible to see this, and it's very hard to resolve. So let's move past broken inheritance. It's a bit scary. It's honestly, we could probably spend a whole hour talking about broken inheritance, right? So what are the key takeaways here, Michael, that we typically want to share as we move out of this section?
So, I mean, we hear a lot around, listen, everyone's permissions are in a massive mess, essentially, right? So again, that's the issue. But obviously, security, you don't have any confidence about who has access to what. Copilot and AI is effective. You've got governance issues, you've got adoption issues. The reason I think, Dave, that permissions and oversharing and broken inheritance is so hot at the moment, people had access to a bunch of stuff before, but you had to search for it, right? So you had to get the correct keyword and kind of understand what you're looking for. So security by obscurity kind of worked, I would say.
Yeah.
That's different in the world of AI. AI is much smarter, right? You can put in a query to say, can you please show me the payment or how much the CEO gets paid? And again, with search, if you put that in, it would look for a keyword, but Copilot and AI is smarter than that, where it might look at adjacent terms. It might be smart enough to realize, well, you're looking at salary, but actually we found a document which is called payment remittance. It's smart enough to work out that's the same thing and kind of bring it back to you. So it's not that Copilot is going to break permissions. It's just that it's much smarter at finding stuff that you've always had access to, but you probably didn't know.
Right. So that, yeah, 100%. That's why a topic that really hasn't changed fundamentally in a long time is kind of rearing its head again, right? And it was the same issue with Delve, the Delve debacle, as many call it, when Delve came out years ago. So a couple really quick best practices, you'll get a copy of this, of course, so we won't go through them line by line, but the anyone link, avoid breaking inheritance when you can, sensitivity labels are your friend, and make sure that there's some settings in there that are actually really powerful, but a lot of people don't know about. So for example, only allows site owners to share an entire site is a good idea. And also this one that, Michael, we see most people don't know about is this setting of allowing guests to share items they don't own is actually turned on by default.
Yes.
Don't recommend
this is another one of these tenant level settings. If you have this, for the love of the gods, please turn this off, because essentially it means that guests can go start sharing items. And this is a nightmare if you allow anyone links, because then a guest can go in and start creating anyone links to any content that they have, even if they don't own it. So it's a common kind of security thing. So you can disable that. It's available in the admin center as well. But this is one of these things that we've seen, people kind of a vector to get into content that they necessarily shouldn't have.
Right. And we kind of show this one, I think, tongue in cheek here for anyone. If you feel like you're not up to date on SharePoint permissions because you haven't looked at it in the last year, not really a big issue, because if you look here, the oldest screenshot I could still find online was SharePoint 2007. I'm confident it actually was still this way earlier than that. And we see that once you dig deep enough into the SharePoint UI, you can see that very much the same architecture is still in place. Can you explain the next to last bullet on slide 35?
Got it. I think it's the only allow site owners. Travis, is that the one? Just give us a thumbs up, mate, if that is the one you're looking for. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, that's the one, Dave.
Okay, so that one really quickly is that what you can do is you can say that members of a site can share content within that site, but maybe they should not be allowed to share the entire site itself, the whole umbrella over which everything is, and leave that responsibility only with the owner. So that's a setting you can change, right? Where you can say sharing the entire site, we're just going to make sure that only owners are allowed to do that. And that's just a good precaution.
You've got Travis or anyone there. That's the screenshot of it. It's in M365 here in site sharing settings here as well. So that's the option that's the option, Dave, right? You're talking about? Yeah, that's the option.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about everyone's favorite topic, AI and agents and Copilot.
Yes.
We've only mentioned Copilot a few times so far, which is far less of a rate than any other Microsoft presentation that's happened, I think, in the last 6 months. So let's talk about this, Dave, because this is all new interesting stuff here.
Well, I don't want to spend a ton of time. Like, there's a whole Agent 101 session that could be had here, but I think before we quickly delve into some of the nuances around agents, it's actually hard to wrap your head around what are even the different types of agents that exist. There's really like 4 main classifications here that we'll talk about. There's Copilot Studio agents, there's SharePoint agents, and then there's like kind of the Microsoft built agents. We're going to focus on just 2 of these as we dig into this forward here today. So Michael, you're going to start here a little bit with SharePoint agents specifically.
Perfect. So let's talk about SharePoint agents. Maybe let's see from the audience here, who's actually used or who's actively using SharePoint agents if their environment. If you want to just give us a reaction of a thumbs up or a clap, or how many of you people? Oh, okay. Oh, wow. Okay. There's quite a few. Okay, there's quite a few there. Tremendous, tremendous. Okay, perfect. So a little bit around SharePoint agents. It's kind of the default way to be able to create an AI experience on your SharePoint content. Again, it's available in every single SharePoint site that essentially you have. And by default, you're going to get a SharePoint agent created for every single SharePoint site that we have as well. I think it's a really powerful capability. It's a really quick and easy way to get AI into your environment through there. A couple of things around SharePoint agents, though, which to me is a little bit odd, but I can understand why Microsoft went this way. So the configuration of SharePoint agents, they're just files. It's stored in a .agent file. It depends a little bit of where that agent or where that SharePoint agent is created into where that .agent file is stored. So again, you can create an agent. People can go and create multiple agents. You can specify an agent as a default as well. You can go and improve agents. And depending on which combination of those activities that you do, either they get stored in, I think it's the site assets folder, or it gets stored within the document library. There's a whole bunch of subtlety. Again, Microsoft doesn't make it easier. The important thing to note, though, for SharePoint agents and for SharePoint agents only, SharePoint agents only have access to the content that the user using the agent has. There's no way to get around that. There's no way to kind of circumvent those permissions, which can be great. It also means that if your permissions are in a huge mess and you're over permissioned, that's not a good thing, because what's going to happen is essentially they might have access to content that they don't have access to. The other thing for me, which is really interesting, is permissions are not just important for people using agents, but also very important for how people can create agents. Because remember, these SharePoint agents are just files. They're simply .agent files. It's a JSON configuration file. You can go and create them manually. You can go and do whatever you want with them. So Dave, if you just want to go to the next slide here. And this is some information. Now, if any of you are Gartner subscribers or members, they put out a really good white paper around 10 challenges with SharePoint agents. Orchestry was mentioned, which was awesome. But it's really interesting because SharePoint agents can be created literally by everyone, which is really odd. So if you're a site owner or you're a site member, and most people are members, right? You've got a bunch of owners, Dave, they own the site. You've got a bunch of people who you want to go and create documents. They can go in, they can create their own agents, they can edit agents, they can even set agents as approved. The only thing a site member can't do is set the agent as default. They can also delete agents as well. So the problem with that is, and we've seen that already, is that, let's say, Dave, you're a very good site owner, as you want to be. You go in and create an agent, right? You put a bunch of stuff in there. I'm a generic site member. I go in there and I accidentally go in and edit your agent, for instance, right? I can go in and edit these agents and change completely how that agent now functions. I can go and set that agent as approved, and then now you've got a completely different experience there as well. So this can be dangerous, but because they're only file as well, right? So it does make it really interesting as well to be able to do that. In terms of licensing for agents, this is everyone's favorite thing. I'm pretty sure I'm right, but if I'm not, don't hold me to this. I think you need a Copilot license to create agents, but anyone can use agents if you've got a pay-as-you-go subscription. And I'm pretty sure that anyone can edit agents. You don't need a Copilot license to be able to edit an agent because, again, it's just a file. So make sure that you have permissions assigned correctly. And what we see a lot of people doing, and Mark, you're actually mentioning this, we are seeing a lot of people breaking file permissions on that agent to get away from some of this. But we have seen this time and time again, Dave, from customers, right? I created an agent, someone went in and changed it, all of a sudden it gave wrong results. I think, to me, the biggest issue with this is that members can edit approved agents, right? That's a problem. I think what should happen is if an agent gets approved and then it gets edited, stick it back to unapproved and let the owners change it as well. So absolutely, again, the permissions, particularly around agents, is not just around the content, it's around the agents themselves, right? There's not really a good answer that we have, But again, we can essentially do that. Do I dare ask if there's anything that breaks if you have just no? I don't think so, Mark, because it's just a file. It literally is just a JSON file there. So I wouldn't think so. Don't hold us to that though.
Now that's the case for SharePoint agents, right? And then this herein is the complexity. You almost need a PhD now in agent theory to understand how these works. So look at this table here. This is just for SharePoint agents, right? What about other types of agents? What about Copilot Studio agents? And I've talked to a lot of people, certainly people in the M365 consulting space, that have said that the only type of agent they're even considering building are Copilot Studio agents. So this is not like a niche thing at all. Some really interesting nuanced information here that I want to share around how studio agents work. So when you create studio agents, and you can create them in two ways, either via the kind of the AI wizard, or you can build it in Studio itself. You can add different content sources that agent has access to. Those content sources provide the grounding by which those agents can respond to your questions, right? There's three main types of data that you can give the agent access to. SharePoint data sources. This is where from the picker, you actually do a search and you say, I want it to pull from my SharePoint marketing site. Great thing here is that security-wise, no big concerns. It will respect the existing security. So if you give someone access to the agent, they ask a question, but they don't have access to the marketing site, okay, no problem. The agent will not leak out any information to that user. Another type of data that can be linked is personal data sources, and this is the one that on the surface looked the scariest, but it's not a big issue. Is you can link your personal team's chats and your email mailbox, the entire mailbox, by the way. You cannot choose just certain emails. You can do that, but at least the agent is smart enough to not show content from your mailbox to your colleague, right? So those first two are relatively okay. Where it gets tricky is you can also add what's called embedded content into the agent's knowledge sources, right? Embedded content is essentially content that you've given it direct access to. You've uploaded it right into the agent's scope. And I don't think that this is that uncommon, right? The challenge with this is that the minute you upload anything, and I'll show you some examples, into the agent as embedded content, that means that it is auto-shared with everyone that has access to the agent, right? So if you upload a PDF or an Excel or something into the agent's purview, it's going to be given direct access immediately to anyone that has access to the agent. You might be saying, interesting, where's that file even getting stored? It actually depends. If you're building your agent with Agent Builder, it's going to go into a SharePoint embedded container, which can be managed from the SharePoint administration. If you build it in Copilot Studio, it actually goes into Dataverse. But regardless, the interesting thing is that you may not remember, or maybe the person that initially created the agent embedded some content into the agent, and now this agent is getting shared out in a growing circle of people. That blast radius is increasing, and that content is auto-shared with them. And really interestingly, even if you're like, oops, I accidentally shared this agent with Michael and I really shouldn't have, even if you remove the access that person has to the agent, it does not clean up the fact that they were granted access to all of the embedded content. That access remains. So it's quite a mess. It can be quite a mess from a governance perspective, almost a nightmarish scenario here. And here's an example. It's not that complex to do. I've created a agent here. I've hooked it up to an Orchestry SharePoint site where the permissions are respected, but I've also uploaded two files as well to the agent. Those go into an embedded container. As soon as I click share here with my agent, these files are going to be automatically shared with everyone that has access to the agent. And good luck trying to keep tabs on who has access to which in this scenario. It's very hard.
Did anyone know this on the call? Because me and Dave found this out about a day ago as well. We actually had no idea this happened. So it is something to consider. Very much so to consider. Now, we only spent, I think, about a day looking at this as well. We need to do some more research on it. This, I think, Dave's going to be a problem, because now if you reshare that agent, those people get added. This is going to be interesting as well. And again, it's difficult because as Dave went back, you do one thing, it goes into Dataverse. You do another thing, it goes into these embedded containers as well. This is going to be painful for anyone and everyone.
I I actually chuckled to myself reading the Microsoft documentation today because it's suggested course of action for cleaning up this, as they just have a one-liner there that says, please make sure you go to the content and remove the access manually, right? Like,
exactly,
oh
because
yeah,
everyone's
right.
going to be doing that.
So quite interesting, quite a bit of a little black hole loophole here. So, I mean, one thing you could do, of course, is just make sure maybe you don't add any embedded content to your agents at all.
Yeah, but of course people will, right? I mean, there's definitely a case for that as well. So,
right.
Awesome.
Okay, so I think we have about maybe 5 minutes here, Michael, to talk about what about the Microsoft tooling, right?
Yeah, let's talk about that really quick. All right. So you're trying to get a handle of permissions. You're trying to understand what in the love of God is going on. And of course, you would think Microsoft makes it pretty easy. It's not that easy, unfortunately. And I think if you've gone through any type of permissions audit and everything else, again, there's a lot of different areas and it gets really confusing. The first area is, of course, going into SharePoint itself. You can see group members, you can see permissions, and then you can go back into the screen that was created more than 25 years ago and look at the underlying permissions, which Dave has a screenshot of here as well. So again, it can be difficult really to understand what's going on. You know, SharePoint permissions at best are confusing, at worst impossible to understand, and it really hasn't gotten any better as well. Next option here, Dave, is SharePoint sharing links. This is the other huge challenge, right, that we have. Sharing links are a massive issue. It's what Microsoft's been talking about in terms of oversharing and everything else. Sam gives you the sharing links that were created in the last 28 days. But if you want to go and find those individual sharing links, you're either hammering out PowerShell, or you're going in and clicking a button within SharePoint, and then it gives you this massive spreadsheet of every single broken sharing link permission in here. Really interesting info. No one in their right mind can actually consume this as well. So it is an option. And what we've heard from our customers is they're trying to get ready for Copilot. They're trying to combat oversharing. And then they're going in and basically sending people the spreadsheet thinking that they're going to go through and delete this stuff. Nothing like that happens. Next slide here, Dave, because I know you're pushing me here. Now, there is some better news in terms of SharePoint Advanced Management, or SBSAM, or whatever it's called at the moment. Microsoft has a whole range of new reports that they have created. Again, if you want to get access to SharePoint Advanced Management and you're not using Copilot, do what the smart people do. All you need to do is buy one Copilot license for your tenant, and this will be lit up or light up for you as well. It's worth the price of admission, folks, of $30 a month, because you get a whole bunch of new reports. Sharing links reports, again, highlight sites that generated anyone links, people links, and specific people links. You've got some things about sensitivity labels. You've got some things about everyone and external users. And there's also an oversharing baseline as well through there. So if you go next here as well. Now, there's also another new report which has come in, which me and Dave were extremely excited about, which is the site permissions for your organization. What this report is going to give you is basically an overview of all of your SharePoint sites and how many people have access, and some unique items and a bunch of really good info. It's going to give you a bunch of high-level information there. Dave and I, very excited to try this. Other people were very excited to try this. The problem with this report, Dave, is the report onto the next screen to show people here. Right. The problem with this report is it takes 5 days apparently to generate. So I'm sorry, folks, we didn't get to this 5 days. We're still waiting for this to generate. Yeah. And you can only run this SharePoint report once every 30 days, right? So Microsoft's giving you some good stuff, but it's also a little bit, I would say, cumbersome as well. But again, this is going to be a really, really useful report. I would love to show you a screenshot of what's in the report and what it looks like. Maybe if we do another webinar in a month, it's going to be ready there for us as well. But I think the first one is supposed to be 5 days. The other thing with the SharePoint Advanced Management reports, just so you know, these aren't comprehensive reports. Most of them, they're trend-based reports. So the sharing links report is going to show you how many sharing links were created in the last 28 days. It's not going to show you all of them. So there's some pretty significant limitations there. Saying that, Dave, this is much better than what we had a year ago, where literally it was close to nothing.
Right.
So remember to do that as well. And again, just to note this out here, because I think Cindy, you had a question as well. You just need one Copilot license to get SharePoint Advanced Management. Doesn't matter if you have one user or 500,000 users. It's a very smart way for Microsoft to be able to tell us that 99% of organizations are using Copilot, because probably most organizations might be buying one Copilot license just to get SharePoint Advanced Management. So very, very smart from Microsoft there.
Good marketing play. Yeah.
Great marketing play. Okay, PowerShell scripts. We won't talk about these really quickly because we're running out of time. We want to show you what Orchestry does. There's a bunch of really good PowerShell scripts available through here. The gentleman at the bottom, Mr. Liebman here, he's actually got a really interesting product around this, which does some really good PowerShell-based reporting. Again, the problem with these PowerShell reports is you're just going to get an Excel file, so that's not great. Yeah. And particularly for large tenants, if you're running PowerShell, which has to go over days or potentially weeks, it's a problem, right? Problem. Capturing errors and it erroring out and all of that sort of stuff as well.
Yeah. And there's the risk of throttling yourself. There's so many issues.
There's and then, so many things you got to consider.
The minute you run a report, the minute you're looking at it, you know, it's already out of date because you need to run it again, right? So you're never looking at real-time data. You're always looking at the most recent snapshot, right? So let's shift over. We're right on time here. We want to spend about 10 to 15 minutes talking about what Orchestry can do. And we'll even share some stuff in a live demo here as well. I think that's the best way to show it. But some of the most recent work we've been really focused on is around solving this problem from a visibility perspective, as well as from a resolution perspective. So for every workspace that we are monitoring in your tenant, we have a sharing links scanning process that runs. Unlike SAM, it's not confined to running once per 30 days. It's not confined by a limit of how many links there are or how old they are. It will go back and find every link ever created that currently exists for every single site in your environment. It will then display it in this really beautiful way. It will give you a nice breakdown of what kind of links do you have, anyone org-wide, specific people, and then the individual link detail on each of them. A lot of power in filtering so that you can find exactly the type of links that you maybe want to remediate or understand. So maybe links that were created by someone who's now left the organization, right? Or maybe links that were created over 3 years ago, right? There's a lot of different business scenarios by which we've heard people want to tackle this problem. And so the best way we can facilitate that is just making this as flexible as possible. That being said, we don't always want to overcomplicate things either. So we've also introduced what we call smart actions, which are essentially guided resolution paths to quickly resolve the issue. So for example here, you could just with one click say, just get rid of all the anonymous links, or just get rid of all the links that we know have never been used by a single person, right? Because let's face it, we got to strike that balance between the really deep technical tools that provide rich depth of data, and also other times when you just need to get something done and move on, right? And so that balance.
Yeah, we really love these things because it's interesting because, again, you know, we've got people that are very, very, you know, smart and so forth, and they make these decisions for them. But, you know, we're at Orchestry, we kind of know what you should be doing. So this concept of smart actions is really, really useful. I think this is a screenshot of the old smart actions. I think there's even a couple more here. We've added 2 more as well. But the beautiful thing is you don't need to be an expert, right? Orchestry will help you through that process, through these smart actions, based on best practices, based on data, and do it for you as well. So these are really, really useful if you want to combat oversharing.
And we talked about broken inheritance. That's the other side of the coin that we need to also show people, right? So sharing links is one part of it. What about broken inheritance? Well, we have a similar experience for that. And we have a similar experience. Someone asked earlier, are we going to help resolve broken inheritance? We're literally working on that right now as we speak, right? So we want to make sure that you can clean up the links as well as the broken inheritance all in the same process. or give you the flexibility of doing them separately if you want to. So here we're going to introduce the ability to reset, file level unique permissions, folder level unique permissions, and in the future extend that to lists and libraries as well. I think one of the things that we're most excited about, though, is this idea of a blast radius, or you might want to call it a permission perimeter, right? Something like that is interesting to talk about, because I think what this does is it really helps users, owners, and administrators understand that because there are different scopes in which users can gain access, and those include, as we discussed, the group, the site. They can be given direct access to items through broken inheritance, and they can be given direct access to items through sharing links. If you look at who has access to your site, you really want to know the total audience that makes up all four of those use cases, right? And there is no way really to go find that for yourself today. So we're working on, now that we have the data, the final piece to put together is to basically illustrate this for you. What is the total audience that may have access to at least something in this workspace? And then we can break it down for you and say, hey, 31 users have access through the group, 85 through the site, an additional 300 or 100 through content access, an additional 234 through link access. Once you see this, this visual is very compelling of this kind of growing concentric circle, growing wider and wider and wider, and really helps kind of illustrate that the people that have access is actually potentially much bigger than you think.
Yeah, and this is something where I think we're super excited about this because, again, the whole philosophy with Orchestry data is not just to show data, but to give you some context to that data itself. So I think this is going to be really, really useful. And then again, in a lot of cases, I know Nia's got a question here within the chat. In a lot of cases, this might be fine, right? You might have broken permissions and it might be entirely expected, but more often than not, where that oversharing really comes in is someone goes in and potentially Dave breaks inheritance on a folder and shares that folder with the Entra ID group, but it's the wrong Entra ID group. It's
Right.
not the Entra ID group for the marketing team. It's the Entra ID group for the entire organization, for instance, right? That's where we find those common issues are and oversharing happens. But we're hoping with this blast radius report, at least we can give you a visual to try to understand what that blast radius concept is. And let us know if blast radius makes sense as a term. And me and David are quite enamored with it. But let us know if that makes sense. But I think it's a really powerful way to understand how many people at the group level, the site level, right? Just content through broken inheritance and with shared links. You can kind of see it open up through there. And I know the internal research that we've seen, a lot of customers and us even internally have got access to stuff that we were like, good God, how did this happen? It just happens because
it just happens.
It just happens.
And then we can break that down by user, of course, for you as well, right? So that you can see details around the whole audience, that whole audience. What are the total permissioned users, as Microsoft calls it, in my group or site? And where does their access come from? Does it come from the site? Does it come from the group? Does it come through a link, etc.? You'll want all of that, right? We're also releasing kind of this smart actions into our workspace review automation. So this is a review automation that goes out to owners and allows them to do quick, very powerful actions within a few clicks and really reduce that oversharing risk within the confines of what your administrators have deemed as kind of a safe area for them to operate. So it's very flexible and can have a really big impact. We've had some users, some companies run thousands of these already, Michael, and they've just closed the door on some of the most obvious gaps for them in a very short amount of time. Right?
Yeah, if you want to limit oversharing and get ready, we should do another webinar about the workspace review. There's so much new stuff. But workspace review, you can go out, create a workspace review, it gets sent out to your content owners. Now, SharePoint Advanced Management also has this feature. The difference with what we've done and what SharePoint Advanced Management has done is with SharePoint SAM, you as an owner would get this massive list of links that you have to go through manually. And what we found and what we heard from customers is like people see this list and they're like, I don't know what the hell I should be doing here, right? This doesn't make any sense.
Too much.
That's why we've tried to make this easier, right? For those content owners, these aren't Microsoft 365 experts, but we want to make sure that we give them that ability to be able to quickly and easily make decisions around permissions. So this approach has worked extremely well to get people to actually say, I don't need these anyone links. I've got a bunch of links that have never been used, and it's all one UI for all one link type. If you use SharePoint Advanced Management, they get a different notification for anyone links, they get a different notification for people with existing access, and they get a different notification with the other one. So they get like 3 notifications to do the same thing. Again, it's great functionality out of the box, but we wanted to make something a little bit smarter and something that we know gets used. So if you want to get ready for Copilot, if you want to combat oversharing, get in touch with us. We're more than happy to help. If you're an existing customer, get in touch with us as well, because it's a really powerful capability that we have here through the review.
And I mean, there are also times when that level of detail is useful, and we don't hide that from the owners, right? We still expose that. We'll show that in our demo here in a second. But through our Orchestry app, we can layer in these experiences both in Teams and in SharePoint via web parts that allows owners, should they require that level of detail, to go and see that full list and do a deeper dive, right? And that's available both to administrators, and in this case, if you're a team owner of your teams as well, because as we see with companies, the larger the company becomes, the harder it is for administrators to really have the business context to know what's right and what's not right. And that's a challenge, right? How do you fix that? So before we jump into the live demo here for the last few minutes, the other thing we've done recently is we've introduced risk ratings and insights atop of our reporting, right? So all of our reporting now is contextualized with a rating of a score of the risk present in that workspace from 0 to 100. And then we break down for you the rationale and the reasons for that score here in the insights. So we can say, for example, in this workspace, we'll actually bring up the same workspace because we like to demo this one. Unaware Shakily here has all sorts of problems. It has no label, it has guest access violations, guest settings mismatches, it has sharing links, anonymous links, it has pretty much all of the strikes you could have against a particular site. And that's why we use it to demo, right? So let's take this now, let's flip over into the actual experience, just so that you guys can actually see that these screenshots are real things that really exist. You should see me flipping over into Chrome window. Michael, let me know if you see that.
Yeah, you're good.
Here. Always a bit of a delay. Okay, great. So I'm in Teams here, a bit of a cluttered environment, which I think most people will be familiar with. I'm in a particular team, and what I've opened here is what's called the Orchestry Team Information tab, which gives a lot of great context to the users and the owners about what this team is about. But what I'm going to do is jump right to the Sharing Links tab here, because this is what I was alluding to, that we want to also make sure that owners to whom we've delegated accountability and responsibility for managing their workspaces have the tools at their disposal to actually carry out that mandate, right? Because the problem is a lot of organizations are trying to enforce that, but the team owners are desperately crying out for help with some kind of way that they can actually carry that, actually perform that activity, right? And it's not easy, as we've shown out of the box, even with SAM, right? So here is a great way that the owner can actually perform a self-audit themselves, right? They can have a look, perform a filter, let's say, let's check out, do we have anyone links? I was under the impression we didn't have anyone. Actually, we do. We have 51 anyone links here, and we make it really easy. If they wanted to get rid of them, all they would need to do is these 2 clicks I've done here and delete the links. Also, as I said, the smart actions can really come in handy, right? So here are the 2 new ones that we've just launched. Links that are created by a now deleted user or a now disabled user often tend to be risky links for companies as well. So right here from the smart actions, we can highlight for you, here's 3 out of 6 that apply to this workspace. If you want, you can click resolve now. The team owner or the administrator can perform this action so that it's being done from both angles. Now, in the SharePoint context, we haven't rolled this out yet, but this will roll out as a web part. So for SharePoint only experiences, that'll be available, Stephen, kind of as a web part, but it's essentially with exactly the same functionality. And then for administrators, they basically can see this from the reporting view, right? So they can go and look at all of the workspaces in their environment. Here is all 5,000 teams and sites in my environment, and I see a breakdown of all the links across all the 3 distinct types of links for every single one of them. And if I want to sort here, let's check out, of course, our worst culprit here is unaware shakily, the same one I had open in Teams. I can jump right over here to the sharing links, perform a cleanup, do that audit, clean things up, remediate links, and I can also start to do that with the broken inheritance experience that we have as well. So these are some of the ways in which we're trying to help. There's many, many facets to this, of course, as we've talked about. We're also really interested in giving that kind of observability around Copilot agents, as some people mentioned in the chat. That's a really big gap right now. And we think that these are all things that with the right data and the right approach, that we can really solve and make much more manageable for companies of all sizes. So anything else you wanted to chat about here while we have the demo open, Michael?
I
5 minutes
think,
left.
we talked about that. Yeah, we talked about all of the broken inheritance stuff. Let's see maybe the workspace review policy really quickly, that
Yeah.
sharing links experience, because that's pretty neat as well.
Yeah, let's see if we find one of the most recently issued ones and can get lucky here with
Just
one
do
that
a do a
has
search for unaware shakily, because
the one should still be in
that
here.
is
All right, let's open
the
this
one
task.
that is bothering everyone the most.
Right. So this is a workspace review that's fully loaded. It's like your all dressed pizza here. There's all the possible steps here available. We won't go through them all, but this is something you can choose to include everything or just a few of them. This is a great way to make sure that your sites and teams are getting realigned periodically back to the standard that they should be. So I'm just going to jump through because I really want to get to the sharing links step here, but it covers things like privacy, sensitivity, version cleanup. Here we land on the sharing links step. And like we've said, we've made this as simple as possible here for the owner. We don't want to block them. We show them some smart actions that the administrator has said they're okay with. In this case, let's say, and we agree, and we're going to go ahead and delete the anyone links and the org links. And then that's all they have to do. It's not a deep audit. It's not a very intensive 5-hour-long investigation required. It's kind of a one and done process. They're in and they're out. So that, I think, coupled with the reporting that administrators have, makes this a much more manageable problem long term.
Yeah, I mean, we're not trying to do the sales jobs on you folk, but for the workspace review in particular, if you want to get ready for Copilot, sort out permissions, apply sensitivity labels, save on storage, everything that you need to do, that workspace review really is we think is a fantastic way to be able to do that rather than all of the out of the box ways.
Right.
All right.
Well, we've reached time here. If there's any final questions, please leave them in the chat. We'll answer them. We'll stick around for another couple minutes. To get to the workspace review, they are live. Expand lifecycle management here, and you'll see a new entry for review policies. And then all you have to do is create your first one, choose which of the steps you want to enable for your users. Those will light up some additional pages for you to configure, and then just make sure you're happy with that. And then as soon as you've done that, you can go and assign these to workspaces and get them executed to start. So that's kind of the quick 101, but reach out to us.
Yeah, let's just go back to the slides here, Dave, really quick while we're about to get done here, just to wrap this up.
Let's go back here to the slides, and I think we'll just fast track right to our kind of end slide here, right?
Let's go to the end slide here.
You want to talk about?
There we go. Yeah, so if you're interested, if you're an Orchestry customer, we're always here. Get in touch with us. If you're not, feel free to get in touch with us. We do have full 28-day, what we call managed evaluation trials, which are available. Really great experience. You can put in Orchestry, get all the goodness, even do all of the cleanup if you need to do that as well. So again, make it really, really simple. And then, yeah, we're right on time. Thank you, everyone, so much for joining the webinar. Did everyone learn at least one new thing today?
One thing, hopefully.
It was just one thing. If it's one thing, hopefully it's worth the hour. Amazing. Let us know. If you are interested in more information, feel free to reach out to us. There's lots more stuff coming. Just before we go, if we're going to do another webinar, what would you like us to do a webinar on? Provisioning, saving on SharePoint storage, or something around Microsoft agents? Let your thoughts be known in the chat, and we'll see what we can do. Cindy, we can't do yes, yes, and yes. Provisioning, agents, or SharePoint storage, basically. Okay, we'll do it. All right.
Well, maybe if Cindy keeps encouraging us, maybe we can do all three. Yeah.
We can do all three.
You just need the encouragement.
Agent, storage. Okay. Storage. Okay, we will do it. The people have spoken, David. We will do some stuff around this for sure as well. Just so you know, the reason that we're asking this, lots and lots of really amazing stuff. You will get the recording. I think we send the slides. If we don't, get in touch with Dave, myself, marketing. We're more than happy for you to use the slides as well, as long as you attribute them to us. Again, thank you so much. Another amazing webinar. We'll be back next month as well. But again, really appreciate everyone's time. I hope everyone's having a wonderful summer as well, even though it's coming to an end. Thanks, Dave. Thanks, everyone.
Have a great day. Thanks, Michael. Thanks, everyone.
Take care.